Hello everybody, so I'm going to make a video for this game, Tooth and Tail, because I believe it is possibly one of the sleeper hits this year. It came totally unexpected. I saw this on on sale and I grabbed it. It looked interesting, and boy am I amazed at this game. It's essentially a more simplified version of StarCraft 2, except it's actually more fun for me than StarCraft 2 because you don't have to have, 500 APM, clicking like crazy all over the map in order to play this game. This is more macro focused than your micro intensive RTS game. So would I recommend getting this game if you like RTS games, and if you like real-time strategy games, and if you like a game with a lot of replay value, a game where you can be very competitive with your friends, then get this game. Like, this game isn't necessarily for everyone because this is a very competitive real-time strategy game. I did play, basically I got this game and I just went straight to ranked and I just played a whole bunch. I got to rank 12 was the highest. Right now I'm on rank 9 because I lost a bunch. But yeah, I played like maybe 400 matches already on this, and in the beginning I just kept losing. But I think I got a very good handle on this game. So I'm gonna give in this guide a very in-depth review of every single unit in this game, and then I'm going to give you as many builds as I have tried, which is a lot. So this is kind of your all-inclusive review, should you get it, and builds video. And I only really intend on making one video for this game, but it's definitely worth playing and getting, because I don't want to give all my strats away, but there's a lot of strats that I would like to put up to help newer players get started. So I'm gonna first go into a unit review. These commanders are just cosmetic, so they don't really give any bonuses. At first I thought maybe they gave bonuses, but they didn't. So okay, so let's start with tier 1. So the first row at the top is tier 1. Each of the buildings that you place down to make one of these units cost 60 food to place down, and then each unit costs about, I think it was 20 food per unit. The building automatically pumps them out, so you don't have to manage the building recruitment process. These units are, I would say, absolutely essential to have at least one of, if not two, in your build, because you want to survive the early game to get to the late game, right? So, let's see. I'll start with this one. This is the Distillery Brothers. Also, let's just call them by their animal names. It's easier for my sanity. These are squirrels. They have 8 HP and 2 attack, and they have 4 range. They're basically, if you look at other RTS games, like if you use StarCraft as an example, these are your Marines. These are your standard ranged units that are, they're the lowest tier unit. They're pretty fragile, but they have a decent range and they can fire, and they train. Each building that you place down for one of these gives you 3 squirrels per building. Once it caps out at 3, you don't make more squirrels. It doesn't just fill the map with squirrels. But you can make more buildings to make more squirrels, and then if they die off, as you get more food, they will replenish the supply of squirrels. They'll recruit up back to their cap. These are really decent units to have. If you don't like staying on tier 1, then I would recommend at least getting squirrels, and then like focusing on all your other stuff, because squirrels are just super standard, super low-key standard. You don't have to like they can fire on everything and anything. They're just a little bit fragile, and if you have them in large numbers, then they can overwhelm. So let me go back. Alright, so these guys, we'll call them lizards. They're kind of like zerglings, except they don't have the zerglings meat advantage. They don't have more health. What they do make up for that is more attack damage than the squirrels. They're not melee, but they're hybrid melee in that they can do stuff that some melee units can. And I'll go over that a little bit later, but specifically it's barbed wire. Some of these things in this game require melee units to remove, and lizards are the only range units that can remove barbed wire. But as a tier 1 unit, lizards are very strong because they run fast. They run twice as fast as any of the other units, and they have higher damage than your squirrels. So what you do in early game with these guys usually is hit and run. You run in, like with zerglings, you do run-bys with them. You go in, take out one of their workers, and then run away. Just, do run-bys. In the mid-game, they're really useful in slightly larger groups to act as sort of front line to soak the damage for your higher tier units. If you have higher tier units that are ranged, these guys, because they're shorter range, will charge in and get in close and take the damage for your backline. So they kind of act that in that way as well. So we have toads. Toads are alright, toads are basically self-destruct units. Think of them as like banelings in StarCraft. They do 12 damage, I believe. Actually don't remember exactly. I think it might be 6 damage, 12 damage. But a unit of these can really wreck the lizards. They specifically counter lizards really hard. They also kind of counter squirrels, but once squirrels get in large numbers, their range and damage combined will be able to take out the toad before the toad can reach them. It's kind of like how a huge ball of marines can stim and get away from banelings and kill the banelings. These guys are semi-useful. I wouldn't use them specifically as your only tier 1 unit though. Because all they do is go in and get themselves blown up, and then you don't have the unit, and then you would have to spend food to remake these. So they're just kind of there to splash in with your other units to effectively take on the role of a baneling and counter mass amounts of lizards, because actually one of the key strategies of lizards is to just get a bajillion of them and run in and kill things and then run away, and it becomes, what you would see in StarCraft, like the Reaper Rush. Okay, so alright, so the pigeons are useful because they're medics, but they don't do any damage. They're a lot weaker. Yeah, they have an attack, but they literally don't attack. Like, they don't actually go and they don't actually hit anything. So they do provide a lot of vision, and they can see over cliffs and whatnot because they're flying units. Another thing to note is most ground units that are melee, can't hit flying units, so it's flying. It heals, I believe, 1 HP per second for everything around itself that's friendly, and it stacks, so you can have more than one. And each building that you build for pigeons, it gives you 3 at maximum, so that's pretty useful. Generally, they're really good if you're trying to like mass up into a really big army and like go head to head with someone. They're decent. They're a decent support unit. You don't usually want to make a lot of them, but you know, just having one or two buildings worth of these is usually going to help turn a fight. Let's see. Mold. These guys are very weird. You don't make a building for these guys, you just spawn them. And you can spawn them anywhere. And so they're kind of a one-time use. So like if you lose the mold, they don't respawn because you didn't build a building for them. But because of this, they have high defense and 15 HP and 4 attack for a tier 1 unit. And they do double damage against buildings, which also includes workers. So, you know, they're really good for sneak attacks. You just drop them into the back line of an enemy player's base, and they can take out a few workers on their own. And it's good harassment, but in the long run, I would not use these for a main army. Although technically, if you go for these in a main army, you would really want pigeons because they do have enough health for the pigeons to really just keep healing them and keeping them alive. And they are a melee unit, so they do take out barbed wire, which is not commonly used, but it's actually very OP once people use them. Alright, let's talk about tier 2. These guys are essentially siege tanks. They only hit ground units, and they have a really long range. And yeah, they're basically siege tanks from StarCraft. They are great at taking down buildings, especially defensive buildings. Because usually the defensive buildings don't have 8 range, they have usually 6 range or less. So this will just outrange any defensive building and take them down. I think the only exception might be the sniper turret, but we'll get to that later. And this is also very helpful because if you have like a large army and you have 2 of these in the back, they will do AoE damage to the enemy team, and it can be very helpful as well. Okay, these guys are your amazing air units that do damage to both air and ground. They have range of 4. Their damage is insane. They're kind of the weakest. Like if you see, they have 15 HP here. Even these guys have more HP, 25. These guys are very weak. They're basically like mutalisks in StarCraft. Like they're pretty mobile and they hit really hard, but they also can't take a lot of damage. It's good to pair them up with pigeons, because the pigeons will keep them alive, and then their damage will help them win the fight, usually just by taking out whatever's in front of them, mowing them down. They're good in decent numbers as well if you want to mass them up. And they're immune to ground units that have melee. So okay, these guys are they're like infestors in StarCraft 2. Basically they do AoE damage, And what they do is they don't really do a lot of damage, like on their attack. It only does 3 damage. But when they hit something, the area around the thing that they hit becomes the poison cloud, and that poison cloud does some decent damage in an AoE for a duration. I think around like 10 seconds, so it's pretty significant. And if you have a few of these running around, they pretty much straight up counter any masked up army. They're just like your anti-large group units. They're pretty OP. They're skunks. Yeah, I'm currently actually, based on all my builds, this is the one guy that I have trouble dealing with. Like, I don't know what's a good way to deal with these guys. If somebody runs these guys, it makes my life so much more difficult. Okay, these guys are stealth units. They're melee, decently tanky, decent damage, stealth unit. So when they're not attacking, they're completely stealth. You don't see them. And then only when they're attacking and in between their next attacks, they are de-stealth. But as soon as they have an attack ready, they become stealth, and as long as they don't attack again, they stay stealth. This is very good at countering ranged units in general. And I don't know, man. These are also very hard to deal with. The only way to really counter them is to have air units that deal with them, and like their hard counter is the wing demons. But if you also kind of have to have enough wing demons to deal damage to them, because they're like really tanky. Like they have 35 HP, and if people use these guys, they usually pair them up with like pigeons, and it's really annoying. These guys, ooh, what can I say? They're really good at taking out tanky units. The harder the unit, like the higher the HP the unit is, you know, like one big guy, then the easier it is for the Viper to take them out, because with some recent patch changes, it used to be that the Viper only just puts a stack of poison on the enemy, and the stack lasts for a really long time. Now what they did is they doubled the damage over time that the stack per stack does, and they lowered the duration to half of the time, and they allow the poison to stack multiple times. So when you have a group of these fighting one big unit, that big unit is gonna melt really quickly from the poison. The poison that they apply lasts for I think about 10 seconds. So within that time, that unit's just gonna keep taking ticks of damage. Unless they get out of combat, they can't really heal. So it's just really good at taking out units that are harder, you know, higher health. Just to go back to these one more time, if you have a large group of these trench gang, it becomes extremely scary because of the fact that you can have a large group that instantly kills a group of enemy units without them noticing, and you can just basically assassinate an entire group of units, and get that first strike off. It's pretty dope. Now let's see, tier 3s. You have, these are all tier 3s, so but both bottom rows are tier 3s. The very bottom row are static defenses, and then this second to the bottom row is tier 3 units, which they I think called heroes. But yeah, they're basically hero units that do different things. I mentioned that in the tier 1 buildings cost 60 food. Tier 2 costs 120 food per building, and then tier 3 costs 180 food. But their higher tier units, they do more. So Uncle Butter, the hog, basically the warthog, is the tankiest unit in the game. He has 100 HP, and this number is wrong. Like, they buffed him. So instead of doing 3 damage, he actually does 6 damage. And what it does is he does a huge flamethrower AoE and burns everything that this flamethrower touches for 6 damage per second. And it just keeps ticking. His flamethrower doesn't like turn off. He just keeps. It's not like a burst and a burst and a burst. It's he just turns it on and burns everything. He's very good at dealing with obviously large crowds of units, and also even when he dies, he also explodes and does AoE damage around him. So he's like the guy you use to really guarantee that you take out a group of smaller units that don't have a lot of health. Okay, so the Badger. This unit, it takes a while to charge up to his full attack damage. He starts off really low. I think it's like 5 damage or something per second. But then as you use him, as he's in combat, I think it takes about 8 seconds before he fully charges up to 20 damage per second. But once he's fully charged up, it's really scary. He uses a minigun. You really want to pair this guy up with pigeons to keep him alive, because of how this guy works. He's not too difficult to kill. He's 60 HP. For a tier 3, that's pretty standard. But there are ways to get, to kill him. Like, you could use what I've shown you so far, like snakes. And then in a bit, I'll show you other units that can also take him out, because they're on tier 3. Okay. Enough said about that. Oh yeah, and he's a ranged unit, so he can attack both ground and air. Alright, so the owl. What to say about the owl? The owl itself doesn't do anything. Like, he doesn't have any attack. He's a flyer. The way the owl attacks is the owl just automatically spawns these little zombie rats. He spits them out over time. And these zombie rats have 3 damage and 15 HP. So they're actually pretty tanky. They're like better than tier 1 units even. But the owls themselves, they don't do anything. So it's an interesting unit. It would be kind of like a Broodlord in StarCraft, but the fact is they don't attack with they don't shoot it at a target. They just drop it down on the ground, and then the rat runs at the enemy. So they're not entirely a sieged unit. They don't siege. But they're really good at battles where it's like about attrition, like wearing out the enemy. This is very good at that. Because they just keep spawning units, and unless they kill this air unit, they can't really do anything. The wolf also doesn't attack. He doesn't do any damage at all. But what he does is he buffs every unit around him to attack ×3 their damage. This is actually really significant. So for example, if you look at the lizard, they have 3 attack and 8 HP. times 3 their damage, they start doing 9 damage per hit. They will one-shot other tier 1 units. Just if you look at all the damage that these units do, if you times 3 their damage, they start one-shotting equivalent units of their tier. So having this guy, yeah, you say, oh, he doesn't have any damage, but what he does is he turns your entire army into this group of units that can just one-shot enemy units of the same tier, and it becomes quite scary. He doesn't combo well with the snake. He doesn't really combo well with the skunk because they don't, like, they do an effect, right? Like the poison cloud and the poison stack. That doesn't really help. But everything, like, oh, and I think he does buff the toad. But like everything else gets benefits from him. This is probably my favorite unit in the game. The fox. It's a sniper, and she does on paper 12 damage. I think, like, if you look, the fox combined with the wolf, right? 36 damage a shot. One-shotting other foxes. One-shotting pretty much all tier 2 units. Okay, 36 damage. Yeah, she just one-shots everything. If you have the wolf and the fox. One of the hardest to deal with units in the game if the enemy has them. The fox. Because she has long range and she does amazing damage and she runs fast. She can run away. So very good at picking things off and then running away. Just doing war of attrition. Because every time you kill something on their side, they're gonna have to spend food to replace that unit. So over time, you're doing economy damage just by taking out units like this. One thing to note, she is very fragile. She has very low HP, and I think it's fair because, like, she's so far up in the back line, like, that it's hard to even hit her. Hard to see her, hard to hit her. And in a large army, her role becomes the character that actually takes out bigger targets. She still hits the little targets. Like, it's hard to, like, tell her what to focus. But say you have a warthog and he survives all the enemy team's units. The fox is gonna start chipping away at that HP bar pretty quickly. Several shots and that thing is gonna go down. Especially if you combo it with the wolf. So that's all the mobile units. Now let's look at the static defenses. So barbed wire is how you wall off. You can make a choke by walling things off. The enemy units can't move through the wire very easily. They can move through it, but like it slows them while they're moving through it, and they take damage. They take 2 damage per second while they move through barbed wire. And the barbed wire also takes damage when units move through them. The equivalent damage. So the barbed wire also takes 2 damage per second. The only way to remove barbed wire is units with melee attacks. So ranged units can't do damage to this thing. Ranged units can only move through it and hope that they wear out this thing. But what you'd use it for is you put this up and you have ranged units behind the barbed wire shooting at whatever trying to move through the barbed wire. It creates space, like it lets your units fire for free, basically. And it's really annoying to deal with, especially if you run a composition without a melee unit. So if you go back, you can only have 6 out of all of these, and you can choose all all siege units or all heroes. Obviously you want a different mix, but if they don't have the right mix to deal with barbed wire, it's really difficult to deal with this thing. the mine is possibly one of the most cost-efficient things in the entire game, because yeah, they blow up, but they're even cheaper than the frog, and they're stealth. So you place this on the ground, especially at like a choke, and it deals massive damage. It does a lot of damage. I think it does like 40 damage or something. It's pretty stupid. Like, for only 20 food in a large AoE around it, it does like 40 damage. So it blows up like tier 2 units too, and like it can significantly harm tier 3s. This thing is pretty strong. Like, yeah, this is the reason why you don't run a fully ground unit based comp, because if somebody runs mines and they mine up the entire area around their base, you can't really attack them. So yeah, this is a bunker. You know, it's really what it's called. Machine gun. It's like a machine gun bunker thing. Pretty standard stuff. Very useful actually. In a lot of different scenarios. You can use it to defend your base. You can put it to wall off an enemy choke point by, you know, forward settling them, and then putting these up right outside their base so they can't move out. Just yeah, your standard turret basically. If you put a lot of these up and then put barbed wire around them, it also makes a huge difference. So this is the sniper tower. It hits, but it is a flying building, quote unquote. You can't move them, sad, unfortunately. But you know, it has a regular sniper range of 6, and it does 8 attack. Okay, so this is the thing that would take it out, because it has 8 range. But this is good for, you know. It has really nice vision, so you can see any kind of harassment coming to you. But this is really good for just zone control. Like, you would put one of these up next to these. If you're trying to like use these static defenses, you might as well do like 1 or 2 of them. So like, for example, bullet hive goes well with feather wire, or you can do air sniper with bullet hive for different interesting combos. The artillery with 8 range is the only one that can actually fight against this artillery, because they're both artillery pieces. Very difficult to deal with. If they hide this up on top of a cliff near their base, and you're trying to hit their base, this thing will shell your attacking units. But that's really like the use of this. That's literally the only thing it's good for, and it doesn't really hit air. Like, so I don't know. It's pretty OP against ground units. But honestly, I would say if I had to choose between this or this, I would always use this. It's a tier 2 as opposed to a tier 3. It's mobile, blah 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 blah. Right? Like, this is just, I would say, a superior unit to this one. But that said, if they do have it and they put it down somewhere in their base, it can make it very difficult to deal with, very difficult to crack open their base. So those are all the units. Now let's talk about strats. So every strat, you want to start with tier 1 and sort of build up. These 2 units are both very strong. Normally you want both of them. You can opt to go one or the other. Just realize what they're weak to, right? So squirrels are actually weak to lizards in large numbers. In smaller numbers, squirrels counter lizards because they have better range and they can kill the lizard before they get them. But in a equal number of lizards, the lizards will take over and kill the squirrels because the lizards have higher damage. So once a large group of lizards close in on the squirrels, they will outdamage the squirrels and take out the squirrels. the frog will counter the lizard because the lizards have close range, and the frog will blow up. So it doesn't matter if the lizards hit the frog. But the squirrels can counter the toad because with enough squirrels, they'll just blow up the frog before it reaches the squirrels. So that's like your 3 standard like early game stuff. You don't really have to worry about pigeons. They don't attack. So you want to include pigeons as a sort of mid to late game support unit, and you really only want to build 1 in the beginning because building more of these, it's not efficient. And these guys are great if you want to go and just put one into the enemy's backline just randomly. Now and again, they're just good at harassing and doing some damage. But I really wouldn't recommend using them unless you're just trying to harass. Like, this is not a standard comp build character ever. Like, they're their own like special unit. Alright, so tier 2, I've already covered like the units in general. So you want to consider units compositions based on what they do together. So these 2 together, they cover each other's weaknesses. This can kill enemy squirrels. The squirrels can cover these guys' weaknesses by killing frogs, and together they make a very strong comp. If you add pigeons to the mix, then suddenly it becomes AoE healing to these guys, and they become really hard to stop, so you need to out DPS them. And this is a way to out DPS them, because these guys have insane DPS. And now you start to see that this is like a standard army comp, and then maybe you add the wolf in for pumping all of their damage up to ×3, so they start one-shotting everything, and then this heals them. And then either adding this for some siege strength, or adding this for some sniping strength, or adding this guy for just insane stupid damage like game, or this guy for AoE, or even this guy for AoE, you know? Or if you want some melee, because hey look, this team only has these guys, they're pseudo melee, they can actually do melee against barbed wire, but say you want some more options, this guy will work, this guy will work, and this is a good comp. Or if you want, you can have an air force, right? This is like your air force, and you can strength with that, or you know, things like this. I wouldn't recommend doing static defenses until you really know what you're doing, because just by having something like this, what happens is when you put down a static defense, right? This building is not going to go and walk over to the enemy base and attack. The moment an enemy who's smart sees something like this, they're just going to grab more resources and start building more pigs and, you know, farmers, and gather more resources because you made a turret. This might be really helpful. If you're going to go full air force, and this is going to counter some ground units, or even this. This is a very solid build. This is an okay build. You want to push in to an enemy base with these guys as front lines, and this is a siege unit. This is already a very solid comp to start with, and then you can add snipers to deal with heavier units, and maybe some snakes to deal with the heavy units, so that you have tier 2 and 3 answers for harder to kill units. If you don't like enemy group units, this can help against group units, and this helps against tankier units. Just a variety of answers. You can have this composition, let's see. One second. I would say this is a very good composition. Because, okay, so you have siege, you have some melee to tank, and this will heal, and then this guy combos well with the pigeon as well. So these two are like tanky melee, or like this is a tanky melee, this is just tanky DPS with fat HP, and then this would work, this would also work. for a specifically harass build, you would like maybe something like this. Like if you want to harass the crap out of your enemies, yeah, so like what you would do with this build is lizards in the beginning. Like if you just put one lizard building down right at the start, you can like third rush them with your first 3 lizards and take out their workers. Frogs to counter their lizards if they have lizards, and then just have a ton of your own lizards and frogs, and then some occasionally dropping moles down into their backline. And then if they start to respond with squirrels and large amounts of squirrels and lizards, or even falcons, you can, like if they do like higher tier stuff, you can rush a fox and the fox will counter out all of them. And then if they stay on low tier and you're just trading back and forth, you can try to rush towards an owl and like win the attrition war, and then have mines sort of scattered around the map in your choke point. So this is like a very attrition build comp. Now another option to do attrition is this. This is risky, but actually no, you would do this. So this is risky, but what you're banking on here is in the early game you have some squirrels, right? Just your standard. But then you start walling off with your barbed wire and place a few of these behind the barbed wire, like a few spaces away, so that it stays out of range of enemy, like, you know, short range units. And then this can fire for free on enemy units that are trying to get through the barbed wire. And then you can put mines on the openings in between the barbed wire, so the enemies walking over it will blow up. And then you have foxes who are high mobility. You can just run through and run through your defenses, because your defenses won't hurt your units. You'll run the foxes through your own defenses, go into the enemy base and like pick off units, and then run away before they can respond. And then maybe drop a few moles, or you know, just this is a very I would say kind of cheesy build, but like it's very focused around, you know, defenses and using foxes to harass and moles, and then squirrels to kind of defend. If you want to like just go for hard counters, this is a very solid start, because squirrels, again, very standard, very good against both lizards and frogs in small numbers. And then instead of like if they go too many lizards, you just go chameleon and snakes, and chameleons will take out the lizards, and the snakes, because well, the chameleons do 8 damage, so they will one-shot the lizard from stealth. So like the lizards are almost never a threat to the chameleons. And then the snakes will take out any of the other tier 2 units that would counter your chameleons. So for example, the wing demons here would be the hard counter to that, but this would actually protect your chameleons from wing demons, because they will put enough poison stack on them to just destroy the flyers. And then let's see, how would I finish off this build? Because you want to be stealthing these guys around and like moving around in different places and abusing stealth, this would be okay. Or this would work. You could also like just rely on tier 1 and 2 only. There's nothing wrong with that. So like, you know, early game you use this to like just start the game, and then you maybe go to the back of the enemy's production building and drop a few moles there. to do some economy damage, and then you switch to your chameleons as your mid-game transition. To transition so that you know, these guys will literally hard counter every tier 1 unit out there, and then if they go for birds, you can put snakes and then bring your own birds into play. Pigeons would actually be what you get at the very late game to close out the game, because once you mass up enough of your own falcons and chameleons and snakes, you support those 3 units with pigeons, and then maybe add a little bit of squirrels. You wouldn't need moles at the end. Maybe, well, why not? Moles at the late game. So yeah, you don't need moles. You have chameleons. But like the moles would be for harass. This is really good, right? Alternatively, another build that I like is you want. This is like, you know, marine siege tank medevac build in StarCraft. Like this is literally marine siege tank medevac, right? And then you have these guys to even increase your siege abilities, and then this guy to keep the air clear of targets that can hit these guys, and then maybe this for good measure, just to help counter, like, you know, your Vikings and your long range, you know, your siege, and then that. This is a good comp. If you want to abuse the comp, like if you want to build around a tier 3 unit, you can. So, for example, if you want to build around a fox, again, you want so the fox has problems with large groups, right? So skunk counters large groups at a lower tier. This counters large groups at a lower tier. This heals the fox and provides vision, right? Vision. And then this helps against large. This gives you like more of a frontline unit. And then see, this is already starting to look like a very decent comp. To help with the fox. See, the fox, they only she doesn't do damage to buildings on her own. She just hits units. So you would want something that hits buildings. So this would be a pure build, like just to support the fox, just to make sure that the fox, or you can get to the fox late game. These two cover the fox's weaknesses and act as a way to transition to the fox, and then these guys are decent early game units of a decent early game comp. Let's build around the wolf. So a wolf strat. See, wolves do, they make your damage dealers do even more damage. So you wouldn't really need this or this, because the wolf wouldn't buff them. This guy would suddenly start doing 16 damage. This guy would just basically one-shot other units of tier 2, basically. And then the wolf would definitely buff this to insane levels, because he'll start one-shotting other tier 1 units. And squirrels, because even though squirrels will only have 6 damage, they're longer range and they can help protect the lizards. And then we close it out with pigeons, because pigeons are good in every comp. So that's a very solid comp that's built around the wolf. The wolf would pump up all these units to do a ton of damage. This will keep everything alive, including the wolf, and be a very solid comp. Alternatively, this would also be a great wolf build. And you could also argue that because these falcons basically can do everything that any tier 2 unit does. You could argue that you get the badger with the wolf. The badger with the wolf gets pretty insane. Sniper with the wolf, she, you know, starts doing 36 damage with a shot. Also very good. You would also do this. This is also awesome. See, the wolf basically buffs all the other heroes. So this would work. The fire would do more damage. This would work. This would work. This and this also. No, this and this also works. But I wouldn't go skunk. Skunk is it's AOE, damage over time, cloud. That wouldn't get buffed by the wolf. So. Just the wolf in general works with everything that just damage. I'd say, yeah, I think out of these, I like this the best, and this one's my second best, second favorite. But you know, you want to play around with it and try out these builds. Notice how most of my builds don't involve static defense, because static defense really limits here. So if you want to do static defense, you kind of want to do it in a way that like commits to it a little bit, because if you just if you just want to have something that just defends your base when you go out and attack, that's this one, not this one. This is able to take out groups of units very effectively. This, not so much. It shoots harder, but it shoots slower, and most units will just run past this thing. But if you want to be extra safe, you want to put a bunch of these in a row, and then put this thing like in the middle of the stack. Or this. This or this. This or this in a combo. Or barbed wires to protect these. And another way is to be efficient with mines. So it's really up to you how you want to play around with it, but only these two can counter air. If you want to build, let's finish the builds out by talking about these three heroes. If you want to build around this character, I've already shown you that the wolf works really well, right? This is vulnerable to air units, and it's also vulnerable to units that can shoot the air, which are these units. So what you want to do is have significant amount of air protection. These are your fighter pilots, and you can kind of consider this as your bomber. But this is really, it drops paratroopers. Let's just think of it like that. And then this buffs your paratroopers, making these little rats that jump down. They do 9 damage because they have a base of 3, and then they have 16 HP. So they're better than your tier 1s. And because you would get countered, like the matriarch would get countered by any of these ground units, you would want the skunk to do AoE splash. Longer. Because these guys can stand behind the rats that this one tosses down and do damage, so squirrels will complement well with this. We could use this at first, but I think this is slightly more superior to that. And this would be like a purely matriarch focused build. Alternatively, if you don't like the wolf, because the wolf is a very big, like it does turn your entire composition into like very strong, but the wolf is a huge investment, like money or like food wise, to put in just to buff this. You get this guy's rats up. So with this build you already have a lot of AoE, right? And you have decent long range damage, and this guy has siege. What you would want is to consider that this is actually bad against barbed wire. So you want something melee that can take out barbed wire. I highly recommend Chameleon. This is a very solid build that's centered around supporting the matriarch. And then Badger. So the Badger really wants to be alive longer to ramp up his damage. So Pigeon is a no-brainer. Badger gets stopped by barbed wire. So no-brainer. Right there. Now this gets countered by air, so you want your own air, and you want anti-air, like that. And then close it out with squirrel. If you can only choose between lizard and squirrel, most of the time I would choose squirrel. Just because of the fact that they don't get countered as easily by frogs. But they do get countered by the lizards, and the way to handle the lizards is have your chameleons or winged demons sooner. So depending on what the enemy has with this build, you respond to it differently. So if the enemy has lizards and you have squirrels, you don't want to mass up too many squirrels. You want to go straight for winged demons to counter the lizards, maybe 1 or 2 pigeons to help, or go straight for chameleons and deal with them that way as well. And then this would be a good build to help your Badger get to the Badger. Now let's talk about the Hog. So the Hog deals with all the tier 1 units very well. He also even deals with the tier 2s pretty well on his own. Again, just like this, he's fat HP, so you want to give him health regeneration, because he is vulnerable to snake, and Pigeon helps counter the snake's stack damage. Another thing is you want the fox specifically for Uncle Butter, because of the fact that the fox can kill snakes, the fox can kill these birds, anything that like counters the pig, right? The pig basically gets countered by air and also gets countered by other foxes. So air. And then let's see, how else do I support this guy? You would want melee. Clear out barbed wire. Like that. Or alternatively, this also clears out barbed wire. And in the case of getting frogged, you would get this. If you get lots of squirrels, this is fine. It's all fine. So this leaves you room, right? Like you could add this for fun for dropping in the back. Add the mine. This would already be a very viable comp. You wouldn't necessarily get skunk. I would add the snake if you want the variety of just having a tier 2 to be able to deal with their like big units instead of having to be forced to use the fox. So this would also work. But honestly, the fox is the superior option between the snake and the fox. It's just a tier 3 version of it. And you can just have this as well. I would say this helps too. A lot. Because with this you're focusing on dealing damage to large groups of units. So this goes along with that theme very well. And then what you're bad against is air. So you want to have something that deals with air. This deals with air, and that also works. Or you can have even this. It's a lot of flexibility. If you want to do some siege, okay, let's actually build our own tier 2 units now, and then we'll close the game. I'll end this video with some tips and tricks about what to do in different situations. So, let's see, snake, Snake deals very well against single targets, so you want coverage against groups of units. So like the skunk and the snake really they just go really well together. If you use one or the other, or the other, and because they're high HP, pigeons will keep them alive. And then because you have pigeons, you want to have both options. Maybe even that. That's a really scary comp. If you want to just build around snakes. The snake poisons can deal damage to buildings. So they're kind of like their own siege unit in a way. They're like your multi-purpose unit that deals damage to anything with a big HP bar. And then anything with a small HP bar, the skunk will counter. And then you can focus on like a lot of like low tier play to get to these. And this is a very, very, very aggressive comp. Low tier aggression. Alternatively, more single target and multi-target type theme going on here. And because you have pigeons, these two go well with pigeons. Or even this, So, snake, very useful in that way. Now, if you want to go skunk and go stealth, right, just be annoying. We talked about using stealth and harass tactics. This is fast harass. This counters their nomads. And then again, you would either use your own birds or just counter the birds with vectors. So this is a stealth build. Very good at harassing, very good at trading, very good at playing low economy, high aggression, very efficient. This also works, but I just relies on stealth. And then if you want to build around the skunk, see the skunk hard counters everything that's low tier that's like, you know, in the groups, it relies on being in a group. So it covers a lot of ground on its own. I already mentioned that it's good against, good with snake because snakes cover its weakness. So let's actually try to make some builds with the skunk without the snake. This deals with large groups, right? So you could use his support to give your Air Force some serious superiority. Just, you know, and then like, honestly, because you're going all air and with some skunks, you could defend yourself like that. Very useful strat. Alternatively, what you could do. For your own guys, get safe. You want air. If you don't want air, siege and end game damage. AoE surprise, defense. This is a weird build, but basically you use squirrels to counter air, and this also semi-counters air. And then what you do is you just all the ground is countered by artillery, and then you just charge in because air is actually pretty fragile against the skunk, and if you have enough squirrels and skunks, they will shut down the air. I was originally saying, you know, go your own air, because your own air will have that natural area superiority, but you can also go for ground superiority and ignore the air, because with the skunk and the squirrel combined, you can, or you know, and also lizards, you've cleared the air of enemy air units, so siege also works really well. This also makes sure, like this just hardcore makes sure they don't have air. that they don't have air, and that you can use your siege properly. And then let's talk about Falcons. This is probably the key cornerstone unit you want to use on tier 2 because they're just good. They're just good on their own. Like, you can even, if you want to rush tier 2 and skip tier 1, this would be the unit to have. This would be the first unit you put down. And then maybe a pigeon afterwards to keep yours alive, and then put more and more and more Falcons down. And then how they would counter that is snipers. You want your own sniper. And then you want so this will help against mass up ground unit armies. Alternatively, you can also even use barbed wire at this point because you're not really relying too much on your early game. You just wall off, make a bunch of make a bunch of falcons, wall off, and then just fly around and harass. And you're pretty safe, and you can work your way up to a fox, stand behind the wall of barbed wire and shoot, and then have your skunk and snakes come support your main army of falcons. And then you can bring your foxes in as well for full-on attack. This is a good option. Full air force. I want to go full air force. This would be the pure air build, air superiority to the max. This will help against air, this will help against air, this will help against ground. And then your own air units can hide behind the barbed wire and shoot. This will be behind the barbed wire, this will be behind the barbed wire, and then you just maintain air superiority and win that way. Alright, let's talk about siege. You just want stuff in front of this guy. That's good stuff in front of this guy. Good stuff against this. In front of this guy. Provides cover against, I think I already did this build actually. This is siege. So you want to have a massive push. This works. Or even this works. This works. This also works. Actually, this would make you vulnerable to air. Yeah, it would make you very vulnerable to falcon. Yeah, no, you would want this. If you want to go this way, you really want this. Or even I didn't cover a lot of comps with Toad. If you build the Toad, you're really relying on the early game. Because you blow up their groups of units and you have yours swarm in. So just having that. Like you're saying, I don't want a late game. I just don't want a late game. I'm gonna go early game and kill you. This is there's no late game. That's another build. So yeah, those are a lot of the builds that I showed. How you play really ends up determining whether or not you win in this build order. And basically, 2 rule of thumbs. 1, the maps are not balanced. So if you can't expand early, that forces you to be aggressive. And so so for every build that you do, say this build. For every build that you do, you want to have an early game plan. So for this build, you would say early game, I'm going to go if I don't have a place to fast expand to, or like an expansion area available to me, I'm gonna start spamming lizards right away and just go and do some econ damage, and then switch to uh, squirrels and lizards to deal with frogs. And then if they start taking up to falcons, I'll get my own falcons, and then just continue to harass, or and then just go all in with pigeons and falcons, and then just you just murder them, and then maybe late game you get one of the two heroes, if it gets to there. Um, like early game plan based on your map. It's really based on your map, and that's why you have to scout. Usually what you open with is you open up with queuing up a farm and then going out to scout the entire map, or most of the map. You want to make sure that once your food hits 60 the second time, because the first 60 it'll instantly make the farm that you queued up. But the second time it hits 60, you want to go back and either put down a farm or build your skirmisher or squirrel. You want to have the first the second one, you usually want to have a unit out, and then anything non-standard like building another farm is when you scout at the enemy base and you realize that they've just gone more farms. So that's one way. Or you can use your initial 3 units to go and harass and take out the farm that they made, and that'll put you ahead. So based on that, another thing is if you scout the enemy building turrets like this, it means that they have static buildings that they can't attack you with. You want to run your hero past these to see if they have a lot of hives that they're building to build units, because if they don't have units, they're just macroing up the economy and they have these turrets, then you want to be expanding and building more farms as well to keep up. Just stuff that you learn from playing strategy games. And if you don't have the opportunity to expand your force to attack, so you want to go aggressive and build a lot of units. That is the end of my guide. So thank you guys for watching. And yeah.